Hello, my name is Niall McKay and welcome to Living with PSC, a podcast about the rare disease of primary sclerosing cholangitis. Now, PSC causes the bile ducts inside and outside the liver to become scarred, narrowed and eventually blocked, and leads to liver cirrhosis. In this podcast, we aim to dispel some of the myths about the disease. Hello and welcome to Living with PSC. We're here today with Jessica and Ian Travis. They have an extraordinary story to tell about transplants and PSC. So I wonder, Jessica, if I could get you just to introduce yourself and tell us where you are and where you are in your journey with PSC.
Well, my name's Jessica, like you said. We live in Ajax, Ontario, so just outside of Toronto, Canada. So I had my transplant December 7th, and it was a living donor transplant, and we're about 3 months post.
3 months today.
Oh, 3 months today.
Mm-hmm.
Happy anniversary.
Liverversary.
And unusually, of course, you're both linked in this journey. Would you like to explain how you're linked, as well as married, of course?
Well, this is Ian, Jessica's worse half. So I was Jessica's donor, and that's how we're linked.
Wow. That must make for a lot of lost arguments, Jessica, does it?
But, well, by the end of it, I'd pretty much given up all power. I had HE by the end, and making decisions or that kind of thing was really difficult. So I just kind of, he would be like, it's time to eat. This is what you're eating. And I would just eat it. Or we're doing this today, or we're going here. So I had no energy to argue. So he got his way.
I did more pre-surgery. Yes, I had my way. It was easy because you weren't a fight. You just didn't have any kind of energy to fight.
And now,
post-transplant, I have my wife back. We'll say that very politically.
So, of course, we came to you because the wonderful social media that you've been doing, Jessica, on all of this, but it's an extraordinary journey. So you were, like many PSC patients, on the list, or were you listed for transplant, or were you waiting to get on a list for transplant?
No, I was listed. So I had done the evaluation. I think it was December, January.
Everything happened in 2022.
And Jessica, would you like to tell us your origin story, if you like, when you got diagnosed? And
I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis first when I was around 20 years old. So that was around 2000. This was 2002. And 2002, 2003. And then it was a year later, I was diagnosed with PSC. So PSC at the time wasn't my main concern because my ulcerative colitis was so bad. So about 2 years after having ulcerative colitis, I had a emergency surgery. So it was a total colectomy with a temporary ileostomy. And then about a year after that, so around 2005, I had a reconnection. And I met Ian in 2006. And then in 2013, I had a perforated duodenal ulcer that kind of came out of nowhere. And I was readmitted afterwards because I turned so jaundiced. I looked like one of the Simpsons. And I was at the top of the transplant list at that point. And then my numbers just started coming down. So there was no need for transplant at that time. And then
or the hepatologist said that you were actually too ill to receive a liver at that time.
Okay. And then, I kind of came back to what my norm was before the ulcer surgery. And then progression for my PSC, that was kind of like the catalyst that kind of, because I had been working full time before that surgery. And then after that, things started to go downhill in terms of fatigue. That was one of my first and most interruptive symptoms to begin with. And I had really bad edema in my legs. So a lot of water retention. And it got to the point where like my hips down would just fill with water. And I had to get albumin infusions near the end to try and control it. I also had a lot of nausea as well. So it was kind of over a 6-year period.
It was 20 years since you were diagnosed with the illness in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. So I had a slow progression for PSC. Like I was non-symptomatic, and the only reason why I was diagnosed, like most PSCers, I had a doctor at the time when I had my UC, and he's like, "You look pale." And for those of you who've never seen me, I'm a redhead with super pale skin, and I never go out in the sun without sunscreen on. So I was just sort of like, I always look like this. But he did my blood work. It came back with elevated liver numbers. And he was like, so some of your numbers are off. And he's like, but you don't have any of these other symptoms. And one of them he listed was itching. And at the time I had some itching. And he was like, oh.
Yeah, because these things come on so gradually, you don't really notice them, do you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was fortunate enough that at least the itching that I experienced then didn't last. I would scratch to the point where you'd have like a bruise, like little bruises.
It usually would be worse in the summer, right? When the heat was around. But
you guys met, and Ian, were you aware of Jessica's illness when you guys met? And
not at first. I mean, I knew that she went through a few surgeries, but we kind of have a interesting beginning of the story, how we kind of how she fell in love with me.
Tell us.
I think about month 2, Jess told me.
I sort of laid it all out on the table. I was like, okay, so if you want to date me, here are all the things. And I just listed everything that was wrong with me, health-wise. And I was like, so, you know, if we're going to be together for a while, I'm like, just be prepared. Like, there's a transplant down the road, and when I'm 80, you'll be changing my diapers. So
she put her cards on the table.
He was so nonchalant about it. He was just sort of like, okay. I'm like, he was and has been.
All in.
And how did you guys meet?
Well, we're going back to high school now.
Basically, there was no way I would have dated him back in high school.
I was too cool.
Yeah.
So Scott and Lisa got married. They had a destination wedding. That's when Jess took advantage of me at their wedding.
It's not true.
And
we started dating just after that.
So then Jess went to Scotland, even though. So then we started our long distance relationship.
Basically, I got real homesick, and I was like, I'm coming home early. And Ian's like, okay, I'm going to find us an apartment. So he found us an apartment in London, Ontario. I flew home and we moved in together. And then we were engaged a year later.
But obviously you're connected in more ways than one at the moment, because
once I was on the transplant list, I was on it for the full year, but
in 2022.
Yes, in 2022. And so initially I had a lot of issues in the beginning when I first got listed. I was having like panic attacks and stuff just because I couldn't even figure out why I was having them. I just had a lot of anxiety around it. And I think a lot of it was not having control over the situation. So my biggest concern was that we were going to find somebody to be my donor really soon. And I wouldn't be ready, quote unquote, for it. And it was quite the opposite, because I have 2 huge families and lots of friends and stuff. So I figured, oh yeah, we'll find a donor, no problem. And that wasn't the case. So I had tried for a few months. I had told Ian we had talked about it, and I had expressed how I didn't want him to apply to be my donor. So he didn't apply. I have a friend, Shauna, and so she made me business cards that had like my information. It had a Linktree QR code on the back that had all my information in terms of like my Facebook, my Instagram, everything that you needed, so we could hand those out. And we were going to a conference in the summer that was going to have around 500 attendees. And we brought the cards, and she was saying a speech then, and she told my story during the conference. And then we handed out, I think, almost all 500 cards that we had made.
This was August last year.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a Facebook group at the time for my donor search. So Shauna and then my other friend Jackie said, we're going to start a Facebook group for you because we need to keep the momentum going, and we're going to run it. And I was like, okay, because I knew I couldn't run it, and they offered. And between the two of them, they posted everywhere, and like between Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and they were calling like radio stations and TV stations and putting my cards up on bulletin boards. It was crazy. And from the conference alone, like I think I had like 200 and something people overnight join the Facebook group.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Basically, it's blood group and sort of size, isn't it? Is the initial requirement, if you like, for moving
And
donor.
anatomy as
But
well.
yeah, the most important one is blood type, right? So you have to be the she's O positive, so you have to be the O positive.
Oh, just O.
That's right.
It doesn't. Yeah.
You're right. So O, and then size and plumbing after that.
And it's the most common.
Most common, yes, but it's the universal donor, right? Not recipient.
Yeah.
But we figured we wouldn't have too much trouble finding a donor with an O blood type, but it was a lot harder than I expected.
There was a few applicants that have went through and passed, or didn't pass, but fell out for whatever reasons.
And a lot of applicants that just what we didn't realize is how many applicants would be turned away for specific things. So there was a lot of people that applied. I was told that we had lots of applicants. I don't know how many lots is, but it went from none to lots.
Yeah,
Wow.
Very vague, right? They can't give you information.
Oh, I see. You just put them onto the clinic, and the clinic does the assessment. It's an incredible story, isn't it? And it is wonderful. I mean, Scott, you're wonderful too, but the people who come in from the outside, if you like, it's extraordinary that people are being so generous, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And that was something that was really hard as well. You don't realize kind of how hard it is to accept help, or you know what I mean? Like you don't realize, like you think you have to do this alone, or that it's your job to kind of like find the donor, and you know that it's all on you. And what you don't realize is that there's actually a lot of people out there or around you that can help. You just need to ask for it. And that's a really hard thing to do. And it's harder than we expected.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But now going through this, we realize like we couldn't have done a transplant without the number of people and the amount of support that we had.
It's pretty hard to even tell people that you're sick when they ask me how I am. The Irish thing is fine. Everything's fine.
The Canadian thing too, right? Like it's almost just like a automatic question and answer. Like you ask people how they are, but you don't necessarily really want to know how they are. It's just sort of like a greeting. So I understand where you're coming from for sure. And it's hard too, because even if you're trying to be honest about it, it's that whole invisible disease thing. Like you don't look sick.
But the problem is that I found that if I didn't tell people, then they would have unrealistic expectations of what I could do.
And I mean, that was something that so before the Facebook group, something that I tried to do is I tried to find online. I was searching for any kind of information that I could find online about somebody going through the evaluation process of going through a liver transplant or just a transplant in general. But I was searching for liver transplant, or even like the experience of going through the transplant itself. And I was checking social media accounts and doing searches that way, and even Google searches, and I couldn't find anything. Like there would be accounts of people going through the surgery, but it'd be pictures with a description. I wanted like a video of somebody talking about it.
Yeah, you don't catch emotions in a picture, right? Yes.
Right. Or you're only getting like I was sick before and now I'm better, and I'm 3 months post transplant. Like I wasn't getting the information I wanted. So because of that, I was like, okay, well, if I can't find it, I'm like, I can't be the only one looking for this. So I started recording and posting on just my personal social media accounts, the evaluation process and the doctor's visit. So I recorded all of it. And that in itself, I found really helpful. So when it came to I was able then to talk about my spoons and how much energy I had and what people needed to expect from me. And it just became a lot easier because then it was online. My friends and family could see it, and they were, watching these videos of me saying, like, just like you, Niall, like I was able to accomplish one or maybe two things a day. And I would explain, like, that one or two things might be unloading the dishwasher. That's one thing. Showering is two things. And then after that, like, you're lucky if you get anything else out of me.
And it also stopped the constant, hey, how are you today? People could see on Facebook exactly how she was kind of doing.
I used to be extremely active. When I lived in New York, I cycled everywhere. If I leave the house, I'm doing well. We're lucky. We're in a town here by the sea. Down to the end of the pier and back is a mile. But if I can do that, I'm lucky. And the problem with that is if you don't do it, then you become less fit and therefore less able for a transplant, if you like.
Yeah, for sure. I totally 100% can relate. So we have two dogs and we walk them. I'd be tired all day long, and then trying to get the motivation to do anything was really difficult. But I have to say that our dogs were great motivation for me, especially because I was home all day with them and Ian would go to work. So I'd be able to take them out during the day. And then I had a neighbor and friend who I walk with. She was sort of my accountability person. So I knew that I was going for a walk with her. So I might feel like crap and be super exhausted, but I would be able to get dressed and go for a walk. And it did become harder in the end. My hepatologist would ask, like, what kind of activity are you doing? And the one thing he kept saying is just keep walking.
I mean, when you have two puppy dogs looking at you, wanting to go for a walk, right? It's kind of hard to...
It's hard to say no.
It's hard to say no, right?
Near the end as well, it became a little bit of a concern even for me to go for a walk on my own, because I would get dizzy or lightheaded, or I was having breathing problems. Like, we talk now and compare the difference. And there'd be times where, so we have a school that we walk around, and that walk takes about 15 minutes. And
1 kilometer.
Yeah. And by the time, I wouldn't be able to make that all the way around without stopping and not being able, and pretty much having an asthma attack. And I'd be crying. I would be crying because I was panicking because I couldn't breathe. And I was crying because I was frustrated because this was ridiculous. I'm like, how is it that I could do this months ago and now I can't even breathe? So I went from that to now, we go on walks in the mornings now, and we'll go for 35. I can go for 45 minutes and keep up with Ian. It's just it's crazy, the difference from what it was like before to what it's like now.
And you also touched on the emotional side of it. Sort of, I've been a writer for most of my life, either a journalist or making films or writing. But it takes a kind of a rhythm to do that stuff. You got to kind of do it every day. I get sick for a week and I'd be in bed for a week, and then my rhythm would be gone. And trying to get back to the rhythm and knowing that you're getting back at a slightly less amount each time, it takes some grit, I think.
Yep. It does. And it is so frustrating. And I would say to Ian all the time, I'm tired. And then I would ask him, I'm like, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm complaining. And he would always say, he was so supportive the entire time, and would just be like, you're not complaining. I'd be doing really, really well for a week, and then I'd get sick, or I just have a bad week, and the rhythm's gone. And now I have to motivate myself to try to get
it's momentum.
Yeah.
Right. So as soon as you lose that momentum and you try to regain it back, it's like accelerating a vehicle, right? It takes more energy to get back up to that speed.
Yeah.
then you're knocked back down again. Right?
Ian used to compare me walking to, it was like dragging a bag of rocks or boulders, depending on the day.
But even to the point, sorry, that's pill time.
Yes, it's my morning medication alarm. We both have the alarm set for 9:00.
Ian, when did you decide that you would risk your carer position for a donor position?
So we're going back to August of last year when the big thing happened where you had all those applicants. September and October kind of went through and things were progressing. And I could see it. I mean, any caregiver of somebody with PSC can. I couldn't watch it anymore. I didn't talk to Jess. So I applied, and in Toronto with our health network here, we have something called the portal, which is
it's a patient portal.
So I've shared my health data with Jessica and vice versa with me. So I forgot about that. And so I applied, and next thing I know, there's a note in my portal saying that the nurse has received my application, and of course Jessica gets this notice, right?
I'm on the patient portal like every day, checking my labs and appointments and all this stuff, and so
I don't get any notification at all, and then all of a sudden there's one.
So I'm on the patient portal and I can see his information near the bottom. And so I'm scrolling down and it says that Ian has a note. And I'm like, well, that's weird because he doesn't have any doctors at the hospital. He only got the patient portal account so that he could access my records for transplant. Like that was the purpose. So I'm thinking, why does he have a note if he doesn't have a doctor? So I look at the note and it's like, thank you for submitting your application. So I immediately called him or sent him a text or something. And I was like, so you applied. And he was like, uh-oh. So then I got a call. I applied to be your donor. And I was like, when were you planning on telling me? He's like, today.
So there was somebody. So in Toronto, I don't know how it is everywhere else, but they do one evaluation at a time. And that can take up about a month. So they'll put one person in. They'll do all the MRI, the blood work,
CT scan,
all the uptake stuff. Right. There was somebody being in the evaluation process when I applied, so I didn't hear back straight away. Just like, yep, okay, your blood match, you're good. Wait for the next response. So then I get a phone call. And the phone call was from the nurse, and she basically said that I'm the next one to be evaluated, to actually go through all the test work. And so my question was to her, because I'm concerned about who's going to be Jessica's advocate as well as caregiver post-transplant. That was my concern that I relayed to her, and she's like, well, in our experience, meaning the nurses and everybody else, it's easier to find a caregiver than it is a donor.
Yeah. Yep. So he called and told me, he's like, so I got a call back and I'm going to go through the evaluation. And so he did explain that, he talked to the nurse and that's what she said. And that day I was just numb. Then he went through the evaluation process and it was really quick. They had all of his exams and blood work and everything they needed within like a week or two.
Yeah, so they called me on a Thursday, and I think I had my MRI and CAT scan and X-ray within the next week.
Mm-hmm.
And were you guys like myself and Marisa? Well, we don't have children, but we were like, oh shit, we got to make a will.
Yeah,
totally that.
So. Yeah, we did that beginning of COVID.
We need to get our wills and everything done, so we did that.
And honestly,
totally with you.
Thank God we did, because it was just one less thing that we didn't have to deal with.
So how are you guys doing now?
Really good, for the most part.
Well, somebody was sick going into the surgery and healthier coming out.
Yes. I'm doing a lot better than I was before. It's like I said before, it's been a bit crazy. So after I got out of surgery, like that first sort of week in the hospital, things started to sort of come back or whatever. And then I wouldn't necessarily notice them right away, but my caregivers would, and they'd point them out and they'd be like, so when was have you ever have you had to have a nap lately? Or, are you feeling nauseous, or have you felt nauseous since surgery? And I didn't. And I had this realization, like, oh my gosh, like it's been like 3 days and I haven't felt nauseous and I'm not tired. Like, or if I was tired for a reason, and then I'd have a nap and get up and then feel better instead of this just constant fatigue feeling of just like waking up and feeling exhausted still. And I have a video of it, and I started crying because I was just like, I couldn't believe how I hadn't felt nauseous and I wasn't tired. My jaundice started going away, and then
your multitasking abilities came back
a little bit. Yeah. And so I was starting to like talk better. Like my thoughts and what I was saying was starting to come out, and I was you could tell my brain was working better because I would
argue.
Yes.
So I'm like, hey, my wife's back.
Yeah. Argue. So my care person, or Ian's care person, was his brother, and my care person was his brother's fiance. And so Tracy and Brad. So Tracy would say like, oh my gosh, she's back.
It was like a switch.
Yeah, she's like, your brain's working again. Like she could tell by how I was just being able to do things on my own or my memory.
I suppose it's too early, but there's no recurrence or anything like that, obviously.
No, not at this stage that we know of. I did have a little bit of rejection in the very beginning, but that was fixed really, really quick.
It fixed itself.
Everything looks amazing.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, in a couple of the notes it says excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask that, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm continuously to push myself, right? Like, so I was healthy going into surgery. So post-surgery, it was, you take a healthy person, you cut their organ in half, right? So I think I was lucky. I didn't have much pain through this process. The medications that they have in the hospital were not agreeing with me. So that I was just basically on Tylenol.
You were in the hospital for 5 days?
Are you guys back to work now, or?
Was back to work 9 weeks after surgery.
And don't they say like it grows back incredibly quickly, doesn't it? It's like in a month or something, it's sort of back to full size.
I think I remember reading somewhere it's within 3 weeks it's back to, so my 35% would be grow back to 85% within the first 3 weeks.
Jessica, are you back to work?
No, not yet. So that's been one thing that's been not frustrating. I mean, because they told us that my recovery would be slower. And it definitely has been, for sure. I'm not at this, like, I'm still needing a nap every day. I get really tired, even after like our 30-minute or 45-minute walks. It takes me a while before I get to the napping stage. It's not immediate.
Yeah.
But I do find that I need a nap probably once a day, but then I wake up and I feel good. Like I said, like my brain function and stuff is a lot better. So I can do some things, because even though the physical stuff is kind of, underway, there's still a lot of mental, stuff to work through after transplant. And that, I mean, at the moment, that's probably the biggest struggle at the moment. But
and how do you mean? What sort of things are you? Can you give me examples?
Yeah, a lot of it is, it's just, you had this old life of being sort of chronically sick all the time, and now you're not sick anymore. And so it's this weird place to be in, where I describe it as kind of feeling lost. I don't really know who I am. And you have like now like these endless possibilities. Like you're talking about jobs and working, and it's like, I don't have a job to go back to. I left my job at the beginning of COVID, and I can do anything now. Like I can do anything I want. And that's super intimidating.
It's a big paradigm shift.
Yeah. And going from like not being able to function normally, or like I used to be afraid to sort of be alone. I never drove anywhere by myself. like, things like that, like being completely dependent on other people. And now I can do things by myself. And that is and like that happens overnight, almost. It feels that way.
It's been a bit of a learning curve for me for that too. Because again, going back to, I was kind of doing all that for her. And now it's like the other day she needed to go to a blood test. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll hang back from work and I'll drive you. She's like, I can drive myself. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Whoa, okay.
And I mean, there's something to be said about grieving the old life that you had. Like, like it's a weird thing to sort of say out loud, but it's sort of like I knew who I was then, and what life was like and what my routine was, and now it's just sort of like I don't know anymore. And there's also other things too that come with it, like I'm so thankful for everyone's help, and it's like, how do you thank people for all the things that they do for you? And there's just a lot of like processing kind of what happened, because it does happen so quickly. And who are you without having PSC or without being sick all the time? And what are you going to do next? And you don't, and looking at lab numbers and now I'm getting them back and they're within normal range. It's just like mind blowing.
So I would get cholangitis and I'd get pretty bad with it, and then I would be on the list, and then I would recover from cholangitis, fortunately, and then I would be off the list. So that emotional roller coaster like really took a toll. It was very difficult each time.
I can totally understand. Like I remember having conversations with the surgeons and doctors before, and it was like the slap of reality that you could die, because they'd be like, you need to find a living donor, or you'll either be too sick to be transplanted or you're not going to make it. That emotional roller coaster of you're well, you're not well, you're well, you're not well. And by the end, like before transplant, like I just stopped thinking about we weren't making plans for the future anymore.
Like even dinner with friends. I mean, you mentioned that earlier. It's penciled in. It was penciled in pre-surgery.
Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have asked?
In terms of the donor, I'd do it all over again.
It takes a whole village, to
have a transplant.
To have a transplant. It's true.
Well, you guys have been great. And Jessica, have you got a link that you can give us to where your journey is?
I have a Linktree account. So it would be Linktree Jessica's Fight for Life. And it's also the same title for my Facebook group.
Well, it's wonderful. Well, thank you both very much for talking to us, and thanks for your service. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this week. For more information about PSC and for a list of people and topics we'll be covering in the near future, please go to www.pscpartners.org. That's www.pscpartners.org. PSC Partners is a non-profit organisation dedicated to providing education and support to primary sclerosing cholangitis patients. There is information and resources on the website. There is a conference once a year. There is a private Facebook group that you can also join. Also, please join our patient registry. This is an anonymous database that provides research support to the medical community who are researching this disease. Thank you very much for listening.